In today's video, we are going to talk about three different stories regarding Venezuela that are currently running around the news cycle. The first one, I'm sure many of you have heard about, has to do with the failed interdiction that was attempted in Venezuela some weeks ago. I think it should put to rest any doubts about the ability of the Venezuelan military to defend its borders. They are not a bunch of sad sacks. They are not a bunch of ragtag Iraqis with Bermuda shorts and mismatched uniforms. They know exactly what they're doing. And there's a very good reason that they know exactly what they're doing, and I've covered it before. They were our ally. During my entire time in the military, Venezuela was an ally of the United States. And yes, they were socialist. They have been socialist from the time before my grandparents were even born. What democratic socialism is in South America has nothing to do with the quote-unquote welfare state socialism that exists in North America. But DC has a vested interest in you believing the two are the same thing when they're not. The Venezuelans have F-16s. That's how close of an ally they were. Hugo Chavez, even after he took power, gave free and low-cost heating oil to thousands of people in the northeast of this country, just out of the goodness of his heart. If the average viewer of mine were to sit down with an average person from Venezuela, other than the language barrier, you would think you were talking to a neighbor. You take away the language barrier and you start talking about common beliefs, common values, how you see the world you would want for your children. You would be amazed at how much they take a dim view of top-down government. Just like we do. We want to govern ourselves in our own neighborhoods, which is what exists in Venezuela. The reason DC had to make you believe this giant lie about Venezuela is because if what went on there became well known in this country, it would be the end of DC, it would be the end of the two-party control, it would be the end of the mainstream media. If North Americans really knew what happened in Venezuela, DC couldn't let that secret get out about what happens when people have the amazing original thought that the mineral rights and wealth of their country belong to them, not government or private business. And that constitutionally, the primary function of the wealth gained from those mineral rights should be to help the people. And Hugo Chavez was emblematic of that belief. And that's exactly what he did. And that's why from 2000 to 2013, the GDP of this country skyrocketed. Gasoline was free. Food was almost not even an issue for anyone. Millions of Colombians fled into Venezuela for the free food, for the free housing, for the free medical care. But Venezuelans were starting to come to America and share this idea that this could exist. But they had to shut this down. Now, first of all, I want to talk about a random guy named Juan, who we have covered extensively. This puppet of Washington, D.C. This is a fault of culture. This is what most North Americans, those who would disagree with me, don't get. Even if everything you said about evil, terrible, horrible socialism was true, or about Nicolas Maduro being a dictator was true, Latin America, South America, those people prefer strong leaders. Men who say what they're going to do and then follow up by doing it, and who do not care one whit about the opinions of their enemies. That's what Nicolas Maduro is. That's why Bolsonaro is in charge in Brazil. It's why they had to jail Lula da Silva. Lula da Silva would have won going away. He was another strong, forceful personality. But more than politics, people down there follow strong leaders. And this guy is literally the opposite of a strong leader. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse for him. I just want to share this article with you real quick. The private U.S. military firm behind the bungled coup in Venezuela was kept in the dark by a random guy named Juan as he misled, pardon me one second, the operation and made poor decisions. A captured ex-U.S. soldier said during interrogation, Juan Guaido, the Washington-backed self-proclaimed quote-unquote interim president of Venezuela, muddied the waters during the failed mission supposedly aimed at ousting President Nicolas Maduro. That's according to Luke Denman, one of the former U.S. Green Berets accused of participating in the failed plot, who has shed more light on the mission in a new interrogation tape. Guaido, thought to have hired Florida-based private military firm Silvercorp to spearhead his coup plans, quote-unquote, misled quite a few people. The American captive could be heard saying in the video aired by Venezuelan state TV, quote, at this point, seeing everything that I have, I believe that Silvercorp, as well as many others, have been greatly misled by random guy named Juan. And that's basically in Spanish here. En este punto, visto todo lo que he visto, creo que Silvercorp, así como muchos otros, hemos sido desorientados por Juan Guaido. It's basically the exact same thing in Spanish. He, quote-unquote, didn't have any reason not to trust Guaido. Denman said, I believe if anybody has made an incorrect decision, it's him. Now, you would have to ask yourself this question. And I do. I speak a lot to my detractors because I know they watch. Believe it or not, a lot of people come to YouTube not to find things they agree with or things that they like or causes that they can get on board with. They come to YouTube to find things they can shoot down. In fact, they even Google it. Things they disagree with, and then go find channels like this to argue with. So, since they're here and they have this opinion, I want to know the answer to this question. Would you follow this guy? He's on the side of the United States. He has been endorsed by the sitting president. He has been called a hero. He has been called brave. He was an honored guest at the State of the Union. Would you follow this guy into battle? Would you follow him into battle? Would you stand with him? Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, see this guy here in the middle? This is Venezuela's defense minister, Vladimir Padrino, trained at Fort Benning, Georgia, in psychological operations. Yep, that's right. Trained at Fort Benning, Georgia, in psychological operations. That's the head of the Venezuelan military. Now do you see why DC has failed so miserably? Isn't it strange that when you look back over the last, what would you say, 25 years? All of the military interventions that have gone on are the U.S., are based on, I guess I should say, the U.S. going in and cleaning up its own mess. Remember Saddam Hussein? He was our guy to fight the Iranians. Remember Manuel Noriega? Another one of our guys that we had to go in and clean that up. And now here's another ally that all of a sudden now is the world's greatest enemy. Do you see a pattern? Sorry, my computer's not working with me today. The Venezuelan military will escort Iranian tankers delivering much-needed petrol to the country to prevent any attempt by the U.S. to stop them. Now, real quick, in case anyone doesn't know, gasoline is a North American term. They have, in the rest of the world, diesel and petrol. When you see petrol, that basically means what we call gasoline. 5 vessels are on the high seas and are due to arrive in the coming days. Venezuela's defense minister said they would be, quote-unquote, welcomed into its exclusive economic zone, which extends 200 nautical miles, 370 kilometers, from its shores. The U.S., which has imposed sanctions on Venezuela and Iran, is reportedly considering steps to deter shipments. This would be an act of piracy if D.C. does anything. I'm just going to say it right now. It would be an act of criminal piracy on the high seas by international law if D.C. does anything. These are 2 independent nations trading with each other. D.C. can threaten our allies all they want. It's not really a great way of doing business. But if country A and country B want to trade amongst themselves, why is that our business? Why is that our business? Even though D.C. has stole billions in gold and cash from Venezuela, out of England, out of U.S. bank accounts. These are the things you're not going to hear CNN talk about, the things you're not going to hear Fox talk about, or MSNBC talk about, or Rush Limbaugh, or Sean Hannity, or anyone else. They're not going to dig deeper for you to talk about Venezuela being our ally. And why now, unfortunately, Venezuelan military tech is all Chinese made. Could have been American made. They have American tech down there. Had they had their choice, it would have been. Their government begged ours to reconsider all this nonsense. They did not want to lose us as an ally. But there are very, very powerful people. And they live in Weston. They live in Parkland. They live in Hialeah. They live in North Miami. They are members of Mar-a-Lago. And they are insanely wealthy and insanely powerful. And they're the ones who are controlling the narrative about Venezuela. That's why Venezuela has not had a choice in this matter. To survive, they have had to deal with Russia, deal with China, deal with Iran. It wasn't their first choice. Don't believe me? Look up the history of it. And people are going to now understand why Grenada is so important. See, because here's Venezuela. Here are the ports. DC knows it cannot go out into open water, international waters, and board these vessels. They have their AIS system set for destinations of South America to order. They don't say Venezuela. So they can't make any allegation of this being some type of a criminal deal between Venezuela or Iran. So when they come in to Venezuela, this is where they're going to come in. If DC is going to plan to do anything, let me show you the distance between Venezuela and Grenada real quick, because this is important. I probably should have done it before the 15.5-minute video point, but such is life. All right, so here's Trinidad and Tobago. That's only 76 nautical miles. 141 kilometers. Now, Venezuela's exclusive economic zone goes all the way out to, I want to get this right, (200 nautical miles, 370 kilometers). About there. So as you can see, this is going to be an issue, because Venezuela's sovereign waters cover this entire area. And that's standard for any country. But it encompasses Grenada. So don't be surprised if this island nation pops up again in the news regarding this issue. I hope DC understands the concept of discretion being the better part of valor, and given that it's an election year, I don't know how DC could ever make the risk-reward analysis on this, that it's a good idea to stop these tankers. Because what's the gain? All you're going to be seen as doing is taking gasoline away from the Venezuelan people. That's it. You're not going to do a thing to affect Nicolas Maduro. You should have learned this speaking to DC or anyone who supports them by now. You should have learned this. All you're doing is making Nicolas Maduro a stronger, more popular leader, as he should be. You're just reinforcing the point. He is the leader they have chosen. And if there was any division in the country, people that thought maybe there was another direction they should go, those people are all going to say, look, we would rather have our guy than any puppet of DC. We would rather have our guy, our strong leader, than any puppet of DC. And that's the reality of this situation. It doesn't really matter what you believe about socialism, capitalism, all this kind of stuff. Down here, this guy is seen now as a traitor and a coward. And this is the guy that DC has thrown in with. There's no coming back from this. There's no coming back from the State of the Union where this guy was honored and lauded and called all of these wonderful names. There's no coming back from that for DC. Would you follow this guy? Would you counsel anyone to follow this guy? I don't think you would, even those that disagree with me. And if not, can you name another strong leader to be followed instead of Nicolas Maduro? And if you can't, then you need to shut up and say, let the Venezuelan people determine their own future. irrespective of the opinions of big oil, North America, or any of its allies. What is so complicated about that? Maybe we get rid of this leader. At some point, we figure out a way to neuter DC, and we become 50 independent nation states like we were meant to be. And perhaps at some point in the future, a few of the states will be able to negotiate with Venezuela again in good faith and say, look, we had nothing to do with it and we couldn't control it. What they did. But that's just hope. I'll leave it there. Like, share, subscribe.